The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, a Eurasian political, economic, and security organization, just wrapped up a meeting on Friday. And at that meeting, there were some developments which really highlight the ongoing schism between East and West that we've been observing over the past several months. I want to talk about those developments in today's video and also some data that we've recently got out of China regarding the import of Russian gold and how much those numbers have really surged in recent months. And I'd like to talk about why China could be buying all of this Russian gold and just what that might mean for the dollar and also for the precious metals markets, gold and silver, moving forward. So let's get to it.
Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Thank you very much for tuning into today's video. I hope you get some value from it. If you do, please give it a big thumbs up down below. And while you're at it, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done that yet. And with that being said, let's get into the news. So this is a story that we got a couple weeks ago about China's gold imports from Russia surging 750%, and that was in the month of July. So in July, China imported about $108 million worth of Russian gold. And that's a 750% jump from the previous month in June, when they purchased just 12.7 million. But really the big increase is from last year. So last July, the Chinese were only importing about $2.2 million worth of gold from Russia. And so year over year, that's a huge increase, 4,800%. This is coming as a result of the ban on Russian gold by the US, Britain, Canada, Japan, the EU, and Switzerland. This is sort of the predictable result of that. It's kind of the same thing that's going on with energy right now, with China and India buying up all that Russian gas and oil that would otherwise be going to Europe and getting it at a discounted rate. Well, now the Chinese are also getting this gold, likely at a nice discount to the going market rate. And I'm sure they're happy to do that. Also, last month we did get the report from Russia that they were going to begin looking at implementing their own precious metals standard. They're going to call that the Moscow World Standard, and this is in direct competition to the Western LBMA, one of the big bullion clearinghouses here in the West. This likely has something to do with why China wants to acquire all of this gold. As I've covered in several videos in the past, Russia and China have been working together towards an agenda of de-dollarization. And a big part of that has to do with holding physical, tangible assets in reserve like gold and, possibly also silver. I haven't really heard too much about any states or central banks stockpiling silver, but it wouldn't shock me if the Chinese at least have some kind of a stockpile of that metal as well. And now, I also wanted to get into the news regarding the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And this is a political, economic, and security organization in Eurasia. It's been around for several decades, and they just wrapped up a meeting on Friday. Now, to give you an idea of who participates in this is a chart of the various member states. You've got China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, might have butchered that name a little bit, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. They're all members. And then you've got these other nations that are observers like India and Pakistan. They used to be observers, now they're full members. Iran, Mongolia, Afghanistan, Belarus, Sri Lanka, Turkey, Cambodia, Azerbaijan, Nepal, Armenia, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. They are all participating in this organization one way or another. And so you're really starting to see these lines getting drawn between East and West. And I believe that this is foreshadowing something that is coming in the global economy and the global monetary system, and what shape and form that's going to take exactly, hard to say, but I think that there is going to be some serious competition to the dollar as the world reserve currency coming up here sometime in the future. And as we know, the BRICS nations and specifically Russia, Vladimir Putin at the helm, they're championing this stuff. They are talking about creating possibly a commodity-backed currency. And this is exactly what old Zoltan Pasar forecast back in March. And I covered that in my video on de-dollarization. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, you should go check that out. Now, some of the developments from this meeting involved Turkey. So President Erdogan of Turkey has suggested that Turkey join this Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a full member. So they're no longer going to just be a dialogue partner or an observer. They want to actually join this. And what he said here was pretty revealing about how he feels Turkey should relate to these Eastern nations. And he says our relations with these countries will be moved to a much different position with this step. And so one of the things we've seen with Turkey is, despite the fact that they are a NATO member and have been for almost 70 years, we've seen them kind of move to closer economic ties with the East, and they certainly haven't been as supportive as the economic warfare and the sanctions that have been levied against Russia. And as a result of that, they've still got some natural gas flowing to them. They also recently made this announcement that Turkey would be paying for 25% of its Russian gas in rubles. And I mentioned this in a recent video that they were still exchanging gas. And I had some people leave a comment saying that the gas to Turkey had been shut off as well at the same time that Russia was shutting off the Nord Stream pipeline. But that's actually not the case as far as I can tell. I've got this article here from Bloomberg pulled up about how daily output of gas keeps falling to the EU because Russia, of course, has shut down the Nord Stream pipeline and they're cutting off all these other flows of gas. But in this article, they mention that the Turk Stream pipeline, that's the one that goes to Turkey, is actually still open. This paragraph here, I'll just read it to you. Almost all major gas pipeline routes to Europe are halted, with flows via Ukraine remaining capped and supplies to Hungary and Serbia going through one leg of the Turk Stream pipeline that runs from Russia to Turkey. They are still exporting about 80 million cubic meters a day. And so those countries like Hungary and Turkey that are a little bit more friendly with Russia, they're still getting their gas. And speaking of Russian gas, the Mongolian president at this latest SCO meeting that just wrapped up, he announced that he supports Russia-China oil and gas pipelines running through Mongolia. I mean, it's probably a good deal from them. I'm sure they collect some kind of a fee for allowing these pipelines to run through their territory. Although, there might be some ecological impact there, but from an economic standpoint, I imagine the Mongolians would stand to benefit from this, so why wouldn't they support it? And this is just further indication of this increased cooperation between Eastern nations. Once they get these pipelines up and running, then all of that gas and all of that oil that in the past would have been flowing to Europe is now going to be flowing to China, and their economy is going to benefit tremendously from that cheap oil and gas. And it will likely be to the detriment of the West to their competitors like the Europeans, who are going to be paying much higher energy prices for years to come. And one further development that we got at this SCO meeting was that Iran also is looking to join this organization. And Iran, of course, is a tremendous producer of hydrocarbons as well. They have the world's second largest natural gas deposits. They just signed a deal with Gazprom to develop that. And so we're seeing the lines continue to be drawn more and more clearly, delineating east from west and starting to really get a pretty good idea of whose side who is on. And one of the things that the East has going for them is that they've got all these resources, like Russia produces a lot of gold, it produces a lot of hydrocarbons. And so the countries that are allied with them and in their camp, like China, are going to benefit from that tremendously. And, this is not a good thing for the global economy. Globalization really, I think, in a lot of ways benefited everybody by keeping costs low. And, there are some downsides to that as well. Jobs getting outsourced and that sort of thing. But basically what this means is for people in the East and people in the West, inflation is going to continue to get higher. Supply chains are going to get shorter and less efficient. And also, you know what they say, when goods don't cross borders, soldiers soon will. And so this is something that, unfortunately, I think is foreshadowing what we can expect to see in terms of economic developments over the next several years. And ultimately, this is going to be very detrimental to the global economy and to the dollar, as well as rival opposition currencies may possibly be produced, which are actually backed by something more than the faith and promise of a central bank and a bankrupt government. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I personally think maybe we could take a page from China's book here and be buying some gold ourselves, possibly some silver as well. But let me know what you take away from all of this. I always love to hear what you all have to say, and I will catch you next time. Thank you all very much for watching. Smart Silver Stacker, out.